All right, we should be live on YouTube. I am just double checking to make sure. Yep, looks like we're good. So, welcome to another Leaving Young Earth Creationism, this time with Cody. And Cody, this is a little bit unusual. This is someone for whom I've moderated a debate against Eric Vierthaler, who you will all know from various series like Dragons or Dinosaurs, as well as Touring a Creationist Museum, which we did 2 episodes of with myself and Eric, as well as Erica, the Gutsick Gibbon, which, yes, did get confusing towards the end of that second episode. Cody was actually taking the young Earth creationist side in the debate that I moderated with him. And that was not that long ago. So this is a fairly recent update. And so, Cody, why don't you tell us about yourself?
Yep. So I'm Cody Sorenson. And yeah, so I was young Earth creationist, a biblical young Earth creationist for most of my life. And yeah, recently meaning about 6 months ago, I was in a debate on dinosaurs and if they coexisted with humans, and I took a young Earth position, but I've kind of changed views on that now, and so in this video I hope to explain a lot about why I've changed, mostly from a biblical perspective, but I will say, like, there is just so many problems with the belief of young Earth creationism, the belief of fundamentalism in the Bible, and it just really comes from a lack of scholarship. But yeah, so in my own life, I've been a Christian for most of my life, and of course I held to a young Earth position, just taking the Bible and this very literal application into science, which I don't believe is right. I'll explain why today. But my young Earth views, what I would do is I would take the Bible and then look at science, rather than letting the Bible be the Bible and letting science be science. And of course, now I regret, like, looking back on all the things of how I was advocating this young Earth view. I completely regret it, but oh well. That's part of the pursuit of truth.
Yeah, don't feel too bad. I mean, I think most people that have changed their minds on things have spent time advocating for things that they now find either incorrect or, in some cases, even just like immoral or something. So I would say, people grow and they change, and that's okay. So don't feel too bad about having been, defending young Earth creationism not that long ago. It's not a terrible thing.
Yeah. And I wasn't going at it for like 15 years or something like that. But
right.
Here's what I'm always reminded by, because I always try to stick with, like, looking at people through a biblical lens. So, like, for example, the Apostle Paul in the New Testament, he was literally killing Christians because he disagreed with them. He was killing them, slaughtering them, persecuting the church. And then, what do you know? He becomes a Christian, one of the biggest advocates of Christianity in the world, one of the most important ones at the time. And so, like, and many people were thinking he was just a big hypocrite. And so it's like, well, I guess my position isn't that extreme, so I guess I'm fine.
Yeah. Well, and then, hey, he ends up being the author of more New Testament works than any other author.
Yep.
Although the exact number is a little bit contended.
Yeah, that's true. No one knows who wrote Hebrews, the book of Hebrews, but yeah.
Hebrews is a little bit up in the air. I've even heard some disagreement about Romans.
Yeah.
But yeah. Oh, we've got a lot of our regular crew. Eric is here.
Cody. Oh, great.
Yeah.
Nice.
So,
hello, Eric.
So when did you become a young Earth creationist, or was there even a time that you could identify as becoming one?
I can't give you a precise time in my life, but I'll tell you it was in, well, as long as I've been a Christian, I mean, I've held to that view, because I didn't study the Bible intently as I do now. So I was kind of like, oh, it says 6 days of creation. Well, it's clear. Let's not compromise. And I want to say this, if that's all right. I just want to say that if any Christians are watching this and they're young Earth creationists, instead of accusing me of compromising with science or anything like that, just look at like at least one commentary by a real scholar on the Bible of Genesis. There's like one real commentary, or just read one book that's not something written by like Answers in Genesis or Kent Hovind or something. Like read like a real scholarly book on biblical interpretation and Genesis, especially like Genesis 1 through 11. Like there is so much deception from young earth organizations. There is so much confusion on biblical interpretation because everyone just wants to pull out a Bible that they got at the gas station that's in English and just, oh, it says this, that's what it means. But it's so much more complex than that. Like here's one thing. I because a lot of people tell me like, oh, well, if the Bible is not super easy to understand, how could it really be the word of God? And well, I just have to, as a Christian, I would just say this, okay? The gospel message is very easy to understand. The Bible, no, the Bible is not easy to understand. So the Bible's not easy to understand. The gospel is very easy to understand. Don't get the two mixed up. And of course, I did for like most of my life. But looking into the Hebrew of the Old Testament and the Greek, it's a very different story than what tradition paints. So I just wanted to say that.
Okay. Oh, have you been working on Hebrew and Greek as a language learning experience?
I haven't been like learning how to speak it fluently, but I've been looking into just like the Hebrew itself to learn how it works, you know. But
Okay.
I couldn't speak it if you asked me to.
Oh, I wouldn't ask you to. Don't worry.
Mhm.
Although it has been fun every once in a while on one of my streams with where we're looking at some creationist thing. They'll trot out the Hebrew or the Greek, and so I just pull it up. I'm like, well, let's double check because I've spent enough time studying them that I can usually verify their claims because they're usually pretty basic or disconfirm. So that's always fun. And I even did it with Old English with Kent Hovind, which was unusual. Yeah.
Actually, I'm doing a video where I'm working on one about Kent Hovind's creation seminars and why he's completely misinterpreting Genesis. And I'm going to go into that. And also, like, speaking of like claims on the Hebrew from young earth creationists, I'm not trying to like single out anybody, but Danny Faulkner, I watched an interview where he was explaining how the Hebrew in Genesis 1, when it speaks of the earth bringing forth grass, he says in the Hebrew, it says like springing up, like supernaturally just popping up into existence. And that's not what the Hebrew is saying at all. That's like basing it on Strong's Concordance, which isn't even what, like, we have English, we have Hebrew. You have to read Hebrew, from ancient Hebrew, from the ancient Near Eastern perspective, and you're going to read English from this modern Western perspective, you know? So when you see spring up, those words, you can't use the English understanding and go to Hebrew like, oh, it means quickly growing super fast miraculously. Like, that's not what's happening. It just means growing naturally. It actually refutes his position, but okay, sorry.
No, that's fine. So how long ago did you leave young earth creationism? Because it has to have been fairly recent.
Yeah, about 5 or 6 months ago.
Okay, so it was not very long after that debate then, huh?
Yeah. Yep. It wasn't long, because that's around the time that I was given a lot of different books and commentaries and just tons of works from scholars, and I continue to buy books on interpreting Bible and the earliest chapters of Genesis, and it's like I was so wrong on what I'd believed, but it's nice to like understand the reality of the early chapters of the Bible and how we can use science and not have any sort of contradiction there, I believe. And I'll explain those things today, but yeah.
Now, I have a quick question, because I think this is something I'm curious about, and I think a lot of the audience will be too. Let's say that all of the commentaries had agreed with Ken Ham. All of them. That's what Ken Ham's interpretation, and I don't actually agree that Ken Ham's interpretation is the most likely valid interpretation of what the Bible is trying to get across. But let's just say that they all had. do you think that you would still be a young Earth creationist, or do you think that there is sufficient physical evidence that that option simply isn't available to you?
Good question. If the commentaries written by biblical scholars, especially the believing, like the Christian or Judeo-Christian scholars, if they were in favor and they were writing in favor of Ham's position, it would be a lot. It would definitely be a whole another ball game, in my opinion, because obviously, if these real scholars are saying he's right, well then, like, I don't know, because then we also have the science, which would show, well, it's not the young Earth view, so it would just be kind of a mess. I don't know. It's a good question, though, but thankfully that's not what's actually happening.
Right. I just wonder because one point that I make every once in a while is that if you're not going to base the way that you're going to interpret the Bible on the physical reality of the world, then you can't ever know whether A, the Bible is right, or whether your interpretation about it is right, because the physical world exists prior to the Bible. Because the Bible is a thing that exists within the physical world. Like you go physically pick up a Bible, even if you get an electronic copy, it's stored as, the voltage state of a bunch of transistors. Ultimately, those are all physical things. And so, to me, one of the things that I always encourage people to do is check your interpretation of whatever book it is that you believe is your guide to your spiritual beliefs or whatever. I'm not here to suggest go be a Christian or go not be a Christian or whatever else. But whatever that book is, if you can't square your interpretation with the physical world, either your interpretation is wrong or the book is. And
yeah, I would agree with that, actually. Even as a Christian, and I'll have some things to say about how that works out with the Bible. But
okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's see. So do you know any particular scholars who influenced you towards young Earth creationism, or was that just sort of the default position that you kind of grabbed from church or whatever?
It was definitely a default, but when it comes to what do the scholars have to say, I got to be honest with you, I can't think of any like big names that would be advocating that young Earth view other than the non-scholars, just the like Ken Ham, Kent Hovind.
They like to portray themselves as scholars.
Oh yeah, they definitely like to portray. Yeah, absolutely. But no, all the Bible scholars I can think of, none of them had any influence on me initially with young Earth and stuff like that, because they don't believe it.
Oh, fair enough.
So it's basically just Answers in Genesis, Kent Hovind, all that good stuff. That's what influenced me, but it's very different now.
Okay. I have a quick logistics question. Do you have the chat pulled up?
Yep.
All right.
Oh, wait, which chat? StreamYard or YouTube?
Either way, they should be the same chat. StreamYard grabs the chat from YouTube.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Okay. I just want to make sure, because I am actually going to have to say, hey, we're going to have a quick question and answer period where I'm going to let Cody answer some questions, because I know we have some, because there is something that I have to take care of real quick that was just came up. So I'm sorry about that. But Cody, feel free to keep talking about your experience there. I apologize. This has never happened, but
it's all right.
You need to quickly take care of something. I'm sorry.
It's okay. Yeah, so how you guys doing? I see Eric's here. He's a very nice person. Cody even made a trip to the Ark Encounter. That's true. That is true. I did. I went to the Answers in Genesis Creation Museum and the Ark Encounter, and I won't lie, they are cool, like museums, whatever you want to call them. They're cool, and seeing the Ark in person, it's definitely a neat experience, but their application of scripture into science is very wrong. And like I'm a Christian, so this is coming from a believing perspective. Their interpretation is really just that fundamentalist, literalist type of uh, not understanding the context in which Scripture was written, and that's the biggest problem with most Christianity today, or at least here where I am in America. What we see is just open up your Bible. Don't worry about the context, not just of the words, but of the culture. Don't worry about the context, and just read it for yourself. What it says is what it means in English. So that's something that really has to die, because it's just not true. Like, just opening up. And another thing I want to say, if there are Christians watching, that's cool. But if you're Christian and you think that that the Holy Spirit's going to guide you to the correct interpretation of Scripture, you're wrong. Okay, there's a question. Hi, Cody. Do you have any problem understanding that humans evolved? My friends all think all life evolved except for humans were created special, she thinks. When it comes to evolution, human evolution, if that's the process that God used for creating and bringing about human beings, I'm okay with that. However he did it, it's fine. Of course, there's going to be the Christians, the theologians that might object to human evolution, humans evolving. They might object because of New Testament passages that say, well, man, like Adam or whatever, man brought death into the world. So if man brought death into the world, well, human evolution, that says that it was by dying that man came to be. So, and of course, that's not quite what Paul was saying in the Bible when it comes to that. So there are some misinterpretations where, and it's really just the young earth organization. Like, if you go to Answers in Genesis, they're going to tell you all about that, about how, well, the Bible says that death came into the world through man's sin. It's like, and yes, the literal just reading of that, the plain wording, yes. But if you actually get into how man brought death into the world, you're going to realize, well, no, it's not in contradiction with evolution. The question is, does science point to evolution being true? And if it does, well, that's absolutely fine. There's no contradiction here. I always thought there was, until I was like really reading into like what the Greek was saying, what Christian scholars were saying about the Bible, and of course the non-believers, but the majority are believing, so it just happens to be that way. But like, okay, if evolution, like if we did evolve and change from some sort of subspecies, there's really no concern. And yeah, there are Christians that might hold evolution, but they might say that, well, yes, we evolved, or at least everything else evolved, but not humans. I think that's kind of a weird way of looking at it. But yeah. Cody, what's your favorite version of the Bible? So my favorite version of the Bible, because I'm really into like comparing translations, and I use different ones, but my favorite version is probably the New American Standard, the 1995 update, or the ESV. They're all good.
I have an ESV. I don't think I have a New American. And I'm back. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
Yeah. So I did see that we had some good questions, and we got into things about human evolution. And there is one thing I wanted to add, which is I've seen a number of theistic evolutionists, particularly Christian ones, who will say something like the human physical form evolved, and then the imago Dei that you hear talked about in Genesis was a supernatural event, and this was placed on either a population or perhaps a pair of humans to make them the spiritual creatures of concern to religious texts like the Bible. I don't know.
Yeah, and here's the thing: like, if Adam and Eve, like, I think they were historical people. I don't think that they were just a metaphor or just like symbolic for humanity as a whole. I think that they were historical people, but I don't think that they were the first people. And what shocks a lot of Christians, when you ask them, okay, show me in the Bible where it says that Adam and Eve were the first people. Well, good luck. You're not going to find in the Bible, at least. It just doesn't say that. They might point to 1 Corinthians where it says the first man, Adam, Okay, but then you keep reading, and what's it say? The second man, Christ, second man, Jesus. Okay, so when it says the first man, Adam, it's not saying he's literally the first human being. It was trying to use it's theologically structured, saying that Adam was the first, Christ was the second. Adam was the first Adam, Christ was the second Adam. So, yeah.
Okay. And yeah, that is interesting, because if we're just going to say that this is, first meaning the first ever, then wouldn't that mean that Jesus was the second ever man?
Exactly.
And that's clearly not true.
Exactly.
There's a whole lot of people all throughout the Bible up until you get to him.
Yep.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. Yeah.
Yep.
So, when you actually, there is an interesting question here that I want to get to, which is, have you ever heard of Reasons to Believe, the Dr. Hugh Ross's organization?
Yeah, I have all his books.
Okay. He's a creationist I find somewhat interesting. And also, I do want to point out something about the word. Typically, I know that there is the phrase evolutionary creationism that's going out, that's more or less synonymous with theistic evolution. I tend not to use it because I find that it is not widely understood, and most people seem to use creationism and anti-evolution as more or less synonymous. So I recognize that people don't always like to, or some people do like to identify themselves as evolutionary creationists, but for me, it sounds like a contradiction in terms.
Yeah, I don't usually say that, but I don't usually say I'm not creationist, though, because I do believe God created.
Right.
It's kind of confusing, but
it's an unfortunate, I think, happenstance that, at least in English, the word creationism has, and I know that there are attempts to reclaim it, but I don't think they're going to be successful. And it's sort of become synonymous with anti-evolution.
Yep, there's that like dichotomy. It's basically either like purely atheistic evolution, or it's biblical fundamentalist young earth creationism 6,000 years ago type. And like there's so much more than that, where those aren't the only two options, but then the terms even get mixed up, like you were just saying. So it's like it's kind of confusing, but oh well.
Yeah. And my goal for the channel is, that people accept the science that's out there. I don't care really, for the purposes of this channel, what metaphysical beliefs they hold to. I have my own preferences, but I don't bother advocating for my preferences on this channel, or recommending that people, reject their current metaphysical ideas, except where they conflict with the actual science. So I'm perfectly happy for people to be theistic evolutionists. Let's see. Oh, and Beach Price points out that sometimes when she uses the word creature, it implies creation, so she uses a life form instead. I can see. Well, so one of the things is creature does etymologically derive from the same place as create, and it does imply a thing that is created. And so, especially if you're looking at older theological works, it will make a distinction between God and creatures, and that'll come up. Especially if you're looking into some of the older controversies in Christian theology, like if you're looking into things like Marcionism or Arianism and things like that, that distinction will come up a whole lot. Yeah.
Like in the older versions, like 1611 King James version of the Bible says like creature, usually, and now translations will say creation instead. But that is something I noticed.
Actually, my King James is the 1611 reproduction that came out a while ago now, but yeah, I have the 1611 reprint, which is nice because it also includes things that most King James versions of the Bible don't, like the entirety of the Apocrypha.
Oh yeah,
which most people I know don't even know that there is a King James version of like the books of Maccabees or things like that.
That's how it was originally released, right?
Yeah, it was originally released with what's currently the typical Protestant Old Testament, and then in the middle were the apocryphal works, not in the typical order that you'd find them in, say, like the Douay Rheims or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
It also separated out like the Psalm 151 as it's like
Oh
not
yeah,
in Psalms.
yeah.
Also the additions to Daniel, like the Daniel and the or
Oh, and the
dragon.
dragon.
Yeah, that's also separated out from the book of Daniel. But there's
Mm-hmm.
notes as to where they would normally have fallen if you'd taken the whole thing as a chunk.
Yeah.
Um, so I would actually kind of prefer that they have just put it in the book in like a bracket or something and said, hey, this is the
Mm-hmm.
section that we consider to be maybe iffy. But interestingly though, Psalm 151 is actually Psalm 150 in Eastern churches, like the Eastern Orthodox
Oh
Church.
yeah, like in the Septuagint, I think.
Yeah, and the reason for that is that two psalms that are usually split in most Western versions of the Psalter,
Mm-hmm.
they form a single acrostic that goes the whole way through the Hebrew alphabet between the two of them, and they're adjacent. And so, yeah, in a lot of Eastern churches, we're like, well, it's clearly a single poem, so it's a single psalm. So that's psalm, and I don't remember which number it is. But then after that psalm, all the numbers are off by one, but they still both add up to 150 because they typically include Psalm 151, which is usually not in most Protestant Bibles. So you
Mm-hmm.
get that weird thing where it's like, if you're talking to someone who is Eastern Orthodox or Oriental Orthodox or something like that, and you want to reference a psalm, be careful which one. Make sure
Yeah,
you're on the
because
same page
it might
there.
be different for them.
Yep, because they have all of the same psalms plus one. It's just that two that are what most
Mm-hmm.
people consider two have been smushed together into one.
Yeah, I bought the Septuagint. I had to learn that the hard way.
Oh, did you? Yeah, that'll be tricky. Yeah, you're like,
Yeah.
okay, Psalm 137. Huh, this doesn't line up at all.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Somebody asked me a question. Said, have you studied any ancient Near East comparative mythologies? Blew my mind to learn about the parallels in Adam's story and others. Yeah, so I guess I'll just talk about that then. Why I left Young Earth Creationism, because of studying biblical scholarship and the ancient Near Eastern context of Scripture. So the Bible was written, and I was kind of already explaining this when you were doing something, but the Bible was written by people, and they were people that lived in a certain time period, a certain place, certain time, with a certain science of their day. They understood the world in a very different way that we understand the world when it comes to like scientific things. So I guess let's talk about Genesis 1. So Genesis 1 in the Bible, that's the story of God creating the world in these 6 days and resting on the seventh. What a lot of people don't realize, what a lot of Christians that don't study it out, they don't realize that this is a text written as a polemic, meaning like a defense. It's a defensive text against all these other ancient creation myths or legends, however you want to use it.
Correct.
So it was written against these stories, and we see significant parallels, especially like in Enuma Elish. So, like for example, in Enuma Elish, there is the waters being divided, waters above, waters below. Well, that's their standard cosmology, that there is liquid waters sitting above the sky. And that's why they thought the sky was blue, because water is usually blue, like in the oceans. And so they thought, well, the sky is also blue. And on a clear day, it looks like a big body of water suspended in the sky. And that was they're not stupid. I mean, it's clever if you think about it. It's kind of clever. They couldn't go up there and see if that was true or not. And they thought it looked like a tangible sky. They didn't understand the concept of an atmosphere or this atmospheric expanse where there's no actual end to the sky. And so the Bible, written by someone in the ancient Near East long ago, when they also would hold to this view of cosmology, that basically the sky is a big vault and it's solid. It's like a translucent dome sitting on a flat earth, and above the dome, it's just all this blue water. And below the dome is the sun, the stars embedded against it, against the dome, and the moon, and they all rotate above the earth. I mean, this is the universal cosmology, or at least very similar to basically all cosmologies in the ancient world before we got into the scientific era. And so, and I actually have a paper written by my friend. He did a very deep study on nearly all ancient cosmologies in the world, and not from today, but from what they were long ago, and all of them were close to the same. They were some sort of flat Earth. On rare occasions, the Earth they thought was square, but usually it was like a disc. It was a flat Earth, a disc Earth, and on top of it was sitting the sky. It was a tangible, solid sky.
It's a reasonable thing to think if you have a very local experience and you don't have the ability to travel very far.
Exactly. Like, they weren't stupid for thinking that. It was just, it's all opposite. That's like the phenomenological language or phenomenological viewpoint. Like, that's how they see the world. Like, when you go outside and look up to the sky, and you're like, maybe you're just where there's a bunch of hills, you don't have a lot around you, it looks like a big blue dome. It looks like the world is flat, because they didn't have planes at the time to see anything different. And so the Bible, the reason that this is significant for the Bible, especially just in biblical interpretation, is that Genesis 1 actually uses that ancient understanding of the cosmos. So what the ancient Hebrews understood of the world, they're putting that into the Bible. And so this freaks out a lot of Christians. And I've seen many really great scholars even kind of squirm around at this because they don't know what to do. I was trying to defend a non-ancient cosmology interpretation of the Bible for a long time, but I gave that up because it just doesn't work. So,
well, we have a related super chat and I'm going to go ahead and anglicize this so as to not try to embarrass myself here, from Seth Ben Abraham, who says, have you read any other ancient Near East myths, for example, Adam? So any myths that you may have read in regards to that?
Not about Adam specifically, but I've read like Epic of Gilgamesh and Egyptian creation myths, and mostly things that parallel the Bible to get a better understanding of the Bible itself. So, but I haven't like read a ton, but I've mostly tried to study out how an ancient Near Eastern person would view the world to better understand the Bible. So here's something, and I don't know if that answers the question. I hope it does, but basically, I guess I haven't read any on Adam that's not from the biblical text, but I've read like ancient, like Second Temple Jewish literature on Adam and different stories about him, which aren't inspired scripture, but they're good to read. So I was saying, like, there's an ancient context in the Bible, and when you don't understand that ancient context, then you won't understand what the Bible's saying. So what Answers in Genesis does, ironically, and this is really ironic, but I want everyone to kind of just pay attention to what I'm saying here, because it's so crucial. So what Answers in Genesis is doing is they're saying you're not accepting biblical authority if you are trying to say that there is ancient cosmology in the Bible, or if you are trying to say the earth isn't really young. But what they're doing is they're actually changing what the author meant in Scripture. What they think of Genesis 1 is that it's saying that when it says, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth, they're thinking of the heavens as outer space. They're thinking of beginning as like this initial, like absolute beginning of time. They're thinking of earth as the planet Earth, our globe. That is not what the author of Genesis was trying to get across. They were not thinking in that way. And if they weren't thinking in that way, Answers in Genesis is the one that's undermining biblical authority. It's not, when they thought of earth, here's a better translation of Genesis 1:1. When God began to create the sky and the land, okay, that's the better translation. Well, it totally debunks the young earth interpretation. That's like the initial beginning, time, space, matter. No. There is a very ancient understanding here. They're thinking from a shepherd or a prophet or king looking up to the sky when God began to create. See, when it says in the beginning, like most translations, if you look into the Hebrew, it doesn't say in the beginning. There's no definite article. It says in beginning God created. Well, that can actually be readjusted to say when God began to create. But now we have a problem here, and I've heard Ken Ham try to address this, because that doesn't suggest creation ex nihilo. There's no absolute beginning. It's like God shows up on the scene, and there's already these pre-existing chaos waters. When God began to create the sky and the land, the earth was wild and waste. Well, that's where did the wild and waste earth come from? See, these are the problems when you really look into the Hebrew and the context of Scripture. And keep in mind, my better interpretation, which is Robert Alter's and his amazing Genesis translation and commentary, that's how he also interprets it, translates the Hebrew. But it parallels the other ancient Near Eastern creation myths, like Enuma Elish starts with when, I think it says like when the gods hadn't been named or something like that. There's no in the beginning. That's not a concept. That's John 1:1. That's not Genesis 1:1. So so now we have no creation ex nihilo from Genesis 1. So now we already have some problems here, or at least not really a problem, but a problem for answers in Genesis. And then you get into it more. So now there was no initial creation. God showed up on the scene, and it's more beautiful in my opinion. But now we have some more problems when you get into the text. What day one is supposedly the creation of light. Okay, but if you read even the English, just read the English so carefully, just so carefully. I don't know how I never noticed this years ago. Well, what's it say? And I guess I'll just pull it up. God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And God saw that the light was good. And God separated the light from the darkness. Okay, well, most people would start there and be like, oh, I bet this is the creation of light, and it's not some sort of, it's more like a scientific thing, they're looking at having to do with like protons, whatever. Okay. No. What does he call the light? Verse 5, God called the light day. Oh, wait a second. See, so it's saying, another way to paraphrase, God said, let there be a period of light, or in other words, let there be daylight. This isn't the creation of light. This is functional origins. This isn't literal material origins of our universe. And if you read John Walton's book, The Lost World of Genesis 1, he goes all into this. And he shows that basically Genesis 1 is not these material origins, but rather functional origins. And he shows how in the ancient Near Eastern context, existence was not defined by something's material, like if it's being extended in the space, but rather people perceived of existence as being if something had a function or a purpose or a role to play. And so what God's doing in Genesis 1 is he's giving everything a function and a purpose. He's saying the light is daytime. He's not bringing into existence literal light. So this is a big misunderstanding. And we can go on. If you have anything to say, sorry, I'm rambling, but I'm just...
No, it's all right. We do have another $2 super chat from Mike Apple, who says, could we get a link to your friend's paper? And
yes,
if you put a link in the private chat, I will make sure that it goes into the main chat, as well as the description. So just put that link in there, and then also maybe put your friend's name, because I don't think I caught that. So
yeah. Okay, so the friend, Ben Stanhope, he's a YouTuber, actually. He has not a lot of videos, but they have a lot of views. So just go onto YouTube, type in Ben Stanhope. He basically does the same stuff I look at when it comes to the Bible and Genesis, and he kind of debunks like answers in Genesis content. But his paper,
that's Stanhope. Stanhope.
Stanhope.
Okay.
Let me see if I can find it though. But yeah, so he in the paper, he shows how nearly every culture in the ancient world, like all of them that we have, all the writings we have preserved, all the archaeology, everything, they all say that the cosmology was flat earth, solid sky, like a dome. And somewhat like the Egyptian texts, they said, well, the sky was like the goddess, like a goddess, like like bending over, and then the earth itself was god. Like everything to them was a god. The air was a god or a goddess, you know.
Yeah.
But what's so significant about that is when you learn all those ancient understandings of the Bible becomes so much more rich and good. Genesis is kind of stale without those ancient understandings, but when we understand how the Babylonians and the Egyptians perceive the cosmos, you realize Genesis 1 is okay, I found the paper. Genesis 1 is a polemic. It was written as a defense against their worldview. It was written as a defense against their worldview, and it's basically showing how Yahweh is the true God. So it's kind of like, because all the other creation myths, what they do is they show that this God does this goddess plays this role in creation, this God had this war, this God did that, blah, blah, blah. And I mean, I say blah, 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 because that's like very common. But what the author of Genesis did is they said, no. The one true God showed up on the scene. Everything was natural. Genesis 1 is demythologized. Okay, the sky is simply the sky. Light is light. And when we go into like the sun, moon, and stars, well, they're not called the sun and moon. And there's a very significant reason for that. Sun and moon are actually called the greater light and the lesser light. He or she who wrote the text was careful not to say that this was the sun and the moon. And he or she was very careful not to put them on the first day of creation, making them look superior. They didn't want them to be worshipped. So the greater light, the lesser light, they're the sun and the moon, to simply be the sun and the moon, for not for some sort of superior positions in the role of the universe, but simply just to mark time. It says so in the text. And so now it's trying to say, no, your sun god, your moon god, the stars, these are just creations of God. They're not some sort of perfect gods that run the universe or are in the universe. They're a creation of Yahweh. That was the point. And the whole passage of Genesis and Genesis 2, they are theological stories, like a picture, a painting, like a big, beautiful theological painting, not to show how God made the universe, but rather who made the universe, why did they make the universe, and it gets more into, well, human our relationship with God. He wanted a family, and that's kind of the point. But unfortunately, Answers in Genesis, Kent Hovind, Creation Today Ministries, Creation Ministries International, Institute for Creation Research, they're all missing the point entirely. And of course, there's so much controversy on what's a day mean? What's a day mean? And like when it says there's evening and morning, a day, like, and of course, unfortunately, a lot of Christians try to stretch that meaning to mean, oh, it means an age, so we can make the days of Genesis match up with the geological ages, which doesn't actually work, but they try to do that, and that's not the point. So it's not. And once you realize, like, wait a second, well, if this isn't actually telling us how God literally made our world, well, that would mean that we can look at the science and not be afraid of it. Do you see where I'm coming from?
Yes.
Yeah. So we can not be afraid of old earth creationism, evolution, things like that, because if the Bible didn't tell us how God actually did it, but rather he gave us an ancient theological story, then, well, there's no reason to say, oh, evolution isn't true. Because why does the church say evolution isn't true? Well, because it contradicts evolution or Genesis 1. They say evolution isn't true because it contradicts Genesis 1. But as I just demonstrated, Genesis 1 isn't an account of material origins. It's simply a polemic written against other. So like this is the whole thing I went through in the past 6 months of just studying the scholarship and realize there's so much more there than what we realize. It's ancient cosmology. And if people don't believe me, if there's any Christians that don't believe me that there's ancient cosmology in Genesis 1 or the Bible as a whole, I guess I should elaborate on that. I'm not trying to say that the Bible is an error, by the way. So I believe in the infallibility of the scriptures and that it's the God-breathed word. It's God's word. But that doesn't mean that it's presenting 21st century modern science. No. God didn't reveal. There was no new scientific revelation in the scriptures. That's not how the inspiration of the Bible was. He didn't tell the psalmists, well, the earth isn't really flat, so just write that it's like a circle. That means a globe. No, that's not what's happening there. And Isaiah, when he says a circle of the earth, that means a circle. It means a disc. Because he understands that cosmology. He probably believed that to be true. And so God honored their understanding of the creation, just like he respects our interpretation of creation today, of the universe, I should say. He respects that, and he uses what we know about it to glorify him and to show. Let me rephrase this. So let's say we could look at Big Bang cosmology, whatever we wanted to look at, and I would say, from my views, it glorifies God. Just like an ancient Israelite would look at the solid dome of the sky and say, well, that glorifies God. Just like, it does throughout the Bible. Like Psalm 19, the heavens declare the glory of God. The firmament, the solid dome sky, shows the work of his hands. And that, the point wasn't to teach us that there's a solid dome sky. That's not the point. The point is God is glorified through creation. No matter how we interpret it, God is, he's the ruler, he's the king. And like throughout Job, there's ancient understandings of the world. And of course, that's not a problem for me because I understand they weren't trying to teach us. The Bible isn't trying to teach us anything about science. It's trying to teach us about God using the science of the day. Do you see the difference there?
Yeah, actually, that is something that has come up on a few things. We have had multiple people ask multiple people on the channel questions like, does the Bible teach a flat Earth? And my response is always, I do not think the Bible intends to teach about the shape of the Earth, but I do think that much of it assumes a flat Earth as its background.
Exactly. The Bible doesn't teach anything about science. It teaches about God and the spiritual realm.
But and I do want to say, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's fine.
I want to say that I did link the paper in the chat. It is in the description, although you may have to refresh the stream to update that. I am, however, going to paste it in the chat again. So anyone who wants to read or take a look at that paper later by Ben Stanhope, that has been linked twice in the chat. And it's in the description. So if you're in the future watching this, or you want to just refresh the page right now, it will be there available to you.
Yep, and it's an interesting paper. It's not too long, but he shows really cool similarities and stuff, and just between all the different ancient cosmologies, and they all line up. It was the Chinese that basically, I think the oldest account we have is from the Chinese that says that the sky wasn't solid, but it was like a infinite expanse. And then everyone was like, no, they're crazy. So, and guess who was right? But so when it comes to like young Earth creationism, and basically it's not that Answers in Genesis is necessarily misinterpreting, even if they are misinterpreting. The main problem is they're misapplying. Okay, so yes, interpretation is crucial, but what's even more important is application. How are we going to apply the Bible and Genesis to our world? I have a question for Cody. Have you studied any ancient Near East comparative mythologies? Oh, that was an old one. Sorry. Okay. Yeah, there's a lot of comments.
Yeah, we usually have a fairly active chat, but I think I'm going to ask another question, and then we're going to actually start opening up to a dedicated question and answer period where we can get all of any questions you guys still have. This will be the time to do it. Of course, I will be going through them basically in the order in which I received them, unless there is a super chat. Super chat will jump to the head of the line. So if you really, really feel like you need that question answered ASAP, I guess you can do that. We usually get through all of them anyway, so don't feel like it's an obligation. But the big question that I have is, I usually like to ask whether or not, one, your friends and family who at least were young Earth creationists know that you are no longer one, and whether or not that has caused any friction and in those relationships.
I've told some of my family, not all of them, but from the ones I've told, they've been okay with it. They're just a little shocked to go, from me going from defending this view hardcore and then be like all the way on the other side of the argument,
Yeah.
But it hasn't really been a problem, so that's good.
Okay. Well, that is good because I find most people usually don't have too much of a problem, but it can become pretty it can become heated. So and of course we have let's see, random Evo times. Tell you what, random Evo times, send me a message on Discord and we can talk about what you might want to do and how we might do that. So let me know there. Let's see. Of course, we have the most important question shall now be asked. How do you feel about pineapple on pizza?
Oh, that's for me?
Yes.
Oh yeah, pineapple does not go on pizza. It's very simple. It doesn't.
Okay. Actually, Bent Hovind, who's in the chat, he got FTFE to change his mind about pineapple on pizza temporarily by saying that Kent Hovind and Nathan Thompson both really love both hate pineapple on pizza. So
I see. Yeah.
Yes, and he was like, "Oh, never mind. I'm a big fan of pineapple on pizza." Couldn't keep it up though.
Yeah.
So let's see. Oh, so let's see. Do we have any opinion? What was your opinion on turtles?
Turtles. Turtles are great. Just treat them well.
Turtles are likely to be the subject of a upcoming video. I had to get some more research done on turtles. Sorry, I had to take a little sip of water. I have a series called Things That Aren't Dinosaurs, which almost anything can be in it, but it can't be a dinosaur. That's the rule, right? No dinosaurs. And I was looking for what to come up with next, and so I put a poll up on my my Patreon, and my patrons voted very heavily for turtles. So
okay.
Yeah, so it looks like turtles are probably going to be up next. We do have some other options that are in there, like other things that I'm thinking about doing in future episodes. Turtles are going to be next, but other ones include things like Organopsids, Archaeocetes, maybe Tanystropheus, some stuff like that. So let's see. Yeah, it's a fun little series. They're short. They're just there to give you a quick overview of some various organisms, usually from the past. Although I did crocodilians, and that had modern representatives too. But and it's just a quick little overview of some interesting and I think often under-recognized organisms.
Yeah.
So, yeah, if anyone is interested, stay tuned for that. Of course,
Can I say something real quick about dinosaurs in the Bible? So when we go to Job 40 and we see this creature called Behemoth, which is just a transliteration of the Hebrew, it's very unlikely that's a dinosaur because when you look at how the Hebrew is constructed, I don't know what the exact names of this are, but basically there's two thoughts, two sentences, and then basically a gap, two sentences, gap, two sentences, gap. It's like a Hebrew style of the poetry. And when it says that his tail extends like a cedar for this behemoth creature, there's good evidence that just internal evidence that that's really not the tail. That's like a poetic way of saying the penis.
Yes.
And when it says the sinews of his thighs are knit together, tightly knit, well, in the Hebrew, that's talking about the testicles. So what it's saying is his penis extends like a cedar, and his testicles are they're properly made. That's the point of the text. And it's
Yes, you
not
don't
saying
want
that
improper testicles.
yes, precisely, yes. So it's not saying that he has like a long tail or something. That's not what it's saying.
Okay. Well, that is interesting because when last we spoke, I was trying very, very hard to explain why I thought it was unlikely that Behemoth was a dinosaur.
Yeah. Well, it's really just a problem with like English translations sometimes. Like the King James says his stones are tightly knit, I think, trying to give the subtle like
Yeah, something like
implication.
that.
But yeah. It's probably just a mythical creature altogether that Job understood at the time, which is the sea dragon. It's not a real creature. And again, the Bible's not making scientific claims. It's not an error. It's just using their cultural context to write about God, basically.
All right. Oh, and so our next question is from Just a Walking Fish, who, by the way, everyone, go check out Just a Walking Fish. He just posted, I believe, his second video recently. He's got good stuff. Go support him. Go give him likes and subscriptions and whatnot. Check him out. Anyway, he says, does Cody have a favorite extinct animal?
Oh yeah, behemoth. No, no. Honestly, I don't know. Really, I haven't really thought about it. I don't know if I have a favorite, but uh, I don't know. I like the T-Rex, so that's a good animal. But
Okay.
yeah. Oh yeah, no. Some people are talking in the chat about behemoth. It wasn't like a rhino or a crocodile or elephant. It was probably something that never really existed. It was just a theological thing, using like chaos imagery from the ancient Near East. And Ben Stanhope has videos on that where he goes into it on his channel.
Okay. Let's see. We have, this is for me. Did you get my Discord message? Yes, thank you. I will be getting back to you on that. So there's been, well, yeah, I'll get back to you off air. It's not important for the stream, but thank you very much. And I did get that message. Let's see. Oh, and Random Evo Times also posted a video today, so go check him out too. He does, I think, almost daily. Get a little video out. And this is from Eric Vierthaler, 92, says, this is a question for Cody. Did our debate plant the seed of you leaving YEC?
Yeah, it definitely helped. I mean, the debate wasn't the only thing, of course, but it definitely helped. So yeah, it was nice. And Eric was very respectful, and he wasn't being mean or anything like that in the debate, so that was good.
Yes, I don't think I've ever seen Eric be mean.
Yeah, yeah.
Let's see. Here we got one from Dark Knight Apologetics. Dapper Dino, for Cody, what do you think of the distant starlight that makes the universe obviously not young?
Yeah. So when it comes to like the starlight topic, yeah, I think it's pretty obvious that with starlight, if it takes billions of years to reach our telescopes, then, well, that's billions of years. I think that's kind of a no-brainer. Of course, there's various young Earth creationist models saying how, well, maybe time out where the stars are is quicker than where it is here. Now they have these weird like gravitational time dilation models, which are just trying to mess up what we already know about science to try to fit an interpretation of scripture, which wasn't correct anyways. Yeah, so I think it's good evidence for old universe, maybe not necessarily old Earth, but I'm not against old Earth, by the way. I'm just saying, yeah. So, yeah.
Okay. Let's see. This is probably for me. Is Bambi Raptor still dubious or not? I'm actually not sure. I'm not very much up on the literature surrounding Bambi Raptor. As far as I know, it's not terribly contentious, but that, of course, is just my vague recollection from not very much reading on the subject. So I would honestly just pop it in Google Scholar and see what the latest is, what the latest literature is on Bambi Raptor, because I don't want to give some answer based on my gut feeling about what I remember. So sorry about that. I do know that Oculus dentatus is still pretty dubious. Well, it's not so much dubious as it's almost certainly a valid name, but as to whether or not it's a dinosaur, that's a little bit up in the air. I'm actually leaning against it, so there's the disappointing dinosaur news of the day. Although actually looking into Oculus dentatus is what sparked what is going to be the next several episode series of debunking a relatively long creationist video. So there's that. Let's see. From Eric Virthaler 92, question for Cody. What view of Genesis does Cody go with now, and how does he interpret Adam and Eve along with the flood? Local flood, regional, mythical?
So the topic of the flood, that's what I was just going to bring up. So, yeah, what view of Genesis does Cody go with now? He does interpret Adam and Eve. How does he interpret? Okay, so I think Adam and Eve, I mentioned this before, I think they're literal historical people in history. I don't think that they were the first people, because the Bible never makes that claim to begin with. But yeah, I think Adam and Eve were historical, and there was some sort of garden, God's garden, Eden, whatever you want to label it, that existed near the Persian Gulf, where it is today. So the flood. Okay, so this is actually... The flood is probably more important for the young earth creationists, a bit like when it comes to the Bible. It's more important for the young earth creationists than Genesis 1. It's a lot more important than they realize, because this is the whole geology issue when it comes to old earth. So there's no geological evidence for a global flood ever happening in history. There's not even geological evidence for a tranquil global flood. It's just not there. They know what to find. And so because of that, a lot of people said, oh, well, then the Bible is wrong. See, there's never been a global flood. Genesis is saying there's been a global flood with Noah's flood. Well, actually, Genesis never quite made that claim. For example, a lot of people say, or they see the words, all the earth was flooded, and they say, oh, well, that's planet Earth. But as I already explained before, earth in Hebrew doesn't really mean a planet. They didn't understand a planet. And if we go to Genesis 10, what's it say? All the earth had one language. Okay, well, that's just talking about a very specific part of the world in the Mesopotamian plains. It's not talking about the whole world. So if we take that and we be consistent, we go to the Genesis flood, when it says all the earth, well, maybe that just means the known world, not the whole world. Like the Hebrews, kol eretz, I think, all eretz, all earth, all land. So if we interpret the Genesis account, or translate it, I should say, with land instead of earth, it's really a different story, especially when it says in Genesis 7:19, all the mountains under the whole heaven were covered, 15 cubits upward did the waters prevail, and the mountains were covered. Well, that word har or harim in the Hebrew can equally be translated as hills. So if it's saying that all the land was flooded, the hills were covered, well, that's a very different story. It's not what traditional interpretations of the Genesis flood have said. And also, in the Hebrew, when it says every animal after their kind, in the Hebrew, the kind, it's mean. The word in Hebrew is mean. And that can actually mean a species, not this general animal family, not like the cat kind. No. It actually means the species of cats. And that's really crucial, because an answer in Genesis is wrong. And they try to point out, oh, well, it can mean the class of animals, but that's not, it's never used that way in the Bible, other than maybe in the flood account, but then it's kind of assuming what they're trying to prove. So no, there weren't dinosaurs on the ark. It wouldn't have fit. And of course, Dapper Dinosaur did a very good video recently on that, why it won't work. But yeah,
yes,
the Bible. Yeah.
Actually, I've done 7 of them.
Well, yeah. I was speaking of the most recent one.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so the flood was, I believe, I hold to the model that Noah's flood was a regional flooding, and it was basically the formation of the Persian Gulf today. It was a formation of it about roughly 13,000 years ago, and not a lot, but quite a few geologists actually, they were picking up on that before any like Christians knew about this whole thing. They're like, was this like the biblical flooding? And they now like, and the evidence keeps lining up. Like even the time scale of it being like about a year, that's the formation. So the Persian Gulf, it extended very far into the plains, and then it kind of receded a bit, and now it's left to what it is now. And it matches the geography of the Bible with Eden and the different mountains, the mountains of Ararat. All these things line up. And I guess there's another question, but I'll say something after that.
Okay. So we have for $5 from, and I'm sorry, I'm almost certainly going to murder your first name. My apologies. Sihilfredo Saravia. I'm going to go with the H on the J there, just because I don't actually know. I hate the letter J because I never know what I'm supposed to do with it in someone's name. Anyway, Cody, is evolution an argument against YEC? If so, why does it? If so, does it follow things like consciousness are explained by an unguided process? How do you reconcile this?
I think it's Sigifredo. Maybe I'm wrong. I thought
Sigifredo?
I think so.
Okay.
So the evolution argument against youngest creationism. Well, I would say yeah, because if evolution is true, then the Earth is clearly not young. If so, does it follow things like consciousness are explained by an unguided process? How do you reconcile this? When it comes to like consciousness, I'm okay with consciousness being something that came about naturally and doesn't have a supernatural explanation. But even so, even if it did come about naturally, that doesn't mean God wasn't involved. So I actually did I uploaded a clip from one of John Walton's seminars. It's on my YouTube channel, just Cody Sorenson, youtube.com/Cody Sorenson 19. Basically, he explains God and science using cake and a pie, cake and a pie, and he's a very good explanation for why people today are kind of misunderstanding God's role in creation and science. And so he uses a cake to demonstrate that it's people look at it like a pie, and they say, okay, we have all these slices of pie. Let's put an S for where God needs to be for supernatural, and an N for natural, where, well, we figured out it only occurs by natural processes in the universe. And so like an origins pie, like where's God fit in? Where's it just natural? But see, that's the wrong dessert. See, over time with that pie, it's all just going to become a bunch of N's, or at least nearly all of them are going to be a bunch of N's instead of S's. And so it makes it look like we're just diminishing God. But see, that's the wrong dessert. We need to use a cake. So a cake, like with layers, let's say there's 2 layers to the cake. The bottom layer, just natural. That's all the natural scientific world. And you can figure out as much of it as being natural as you want. Let's say all of it's natural. That doesn't change the picture for, and this is my opinion, of course, and you don't have to agree with me, that's fine, but it doesn't change the situation with God's role in creation. He's the one presiding over the whole thing as the upper layer of the cake. His whole kingdom, his whole realm, the supernatural. And so, yeah, and so when it comes to consciousness, I think it probably was natural. We just don't understand it yet, so we put a big S there, but then we'll eventually probably put an N. Doesn't change anything for the role of God in creation. That's just my opinion, though. The whole book is mythology. Why wouldn't it be?
I think that it was probably the flood.
Oh, I see.
What I would actually disagree that the whole of the Bible is mythology, because mythology is a particular genre, and some of it is definitely not. Like,
even if it's fake, it's not mythology. There's a difference.
Well, I would actually say some of it is mythology. I would say that Genesis 1
No, yeah, I agree, yeah. Genesis 1 through 11 is mythology, but it doesn't mean it's necessarily, like, made-up fiction that's not true. It's like mythology is more like a genre.
Mm-hmm.
Like the Gospels.
Sorry. The point of mythology is to give the listeners or the readers some idea about why the world functions the way it does and what their proper place in it, or
Yeah.
to a smaller scale, it could be why the particular nation is the way it is and what your proper place in it as a citizen or subject or whatever. And they
Exactly.
don't have to be false. And actually, quite a bit of the Bible is not mythological. Much of it is a historical narrative of whatever accuracy. Much of it is also things like correspondence between people, which again, it's not mythology. There are sermons in it. Again, those aren't mythology. So I do think we need to be careful to differentiate between one, true and false, between myth and not myth. Myths aren't false because they're myths, and things that are true can also be myths. So
Yep. A lot of people think myth automatically means like just fake or fiction, but that's not quite what a myth is, or mythology.
No, I'd say many myths are false.
Yeah, definitely.
But that's not. There's not a one-to-one correspondence there. And we have from Miguel Francesco Ogar. Cody, what advice can you give for a guy who's looking for his faith?
I guess maybe, does he mean like who's looking in, trying to find the right religious worldview or something, or?
I'm not sure. I guess go with whatever you would say to someone.
His faith.
Yeah.
If this guy is looking to see if Christianity is true, since I'm a Christian, well, I'll say something about it. I mean, to see if Christianity is true, well, you need to go to the 4 Gospels first. You need to go to Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Is Jesus reliable? Was he ever wrong in his claims? These are the things you have to look at and see if was he correct? Was he consistent? Are there internal inconsistencies in the 4 Gospels? And if you find out, well, Jesus seems to be a very reliable figure, and I can't find anything false in what he says, other than things I can't necessarily prove, like heaven or hell, well, then maybe we should look into more of the scriptures, and you go through the Bible, and it's okay to be a skeptic when it comes to the Bible or any religion. I mean, if you're not skeptical of the religion you're in, like, I don't want to sound kind of like a jerk, but like, you're probably brainwashed. So you have to be.
You can sound like a jerk. I can't.
Okay. But you have to really look into, does archaeology line up with the Bible? And of course, many people would say it doesn't. And there are unanswered questions. Or you look into textual criticism. Has the Bible been properly preserved? And we get into that topic. Or if maybe he's talking about just faith in God, or a God or gods. It's more of a philosophical thing, but I mean, you're going to get better answers from philosophers and other, like, Christian theologians than I can give. But I mean, it's a long process for looking into what's the right religious worldview. But I mean, it all comes down to, I believe there is absolute truth. So there is something that is actually right. And so, unfortunately, a lot of people are on the pursuit of comfort and certainty rather than what's actually true. Because what's actually true could be really offensive. Like, Christianity is a really offensive religion. So it makes you change, or you would have to pick up your cross and follow Christ. You'd have to change the way you're living. No matter how good of a person you may have been or thought you were still in the wrong ultimately. So, but yeah, next question, I guess.
Okay, our next question is from Eric Virthaler 92, who says, question for Cody. Did the after show contribute to you leaving YEC 2?
Yeah, so a lot of the things that Dapper Dino was telling me, I mean, helped me realize there are a lot of problems with flood geology, which if you guys don't know, flood geology is just interpreting geology through the lens of this global biblical flood, which the Bible never says to begin with. But, and also, there are things like looking at DNA, all these things, and a lot of it's way over my head, and that's fine because my focus is on biblical interpretation. But it just, yeah. So to answer the question, the after show definitely, it helped me see young Earth creationism from a different point of view that made me reconsider it for sure. So yeah.
Okay. Well, that's actually good to know. I didn't want to myself go into that too much because that was much more. There was much more direct interaction between us, and I think we weren't quite heated, but we were definitely both strongly advocating for very different positions. I'll say that, and so yeah, I was actually kind of curious, but I figured that would be something that I would let go. But hey, you know what? Eric asked it, so.
Yep.
But yeah, I do want to say, if you do want to watch that, it's on Vandalia 1998's channel. And the debate, or actually, are they both on Eric Verteller's channel?
I'm not sure, honestly. I wouldn't rewatch them if I were you, though.
Oh, well, okay.
Just stick to this video, everyone. Just stick to this one.
Are you a little embarrassed?
Just stick to this video. No need to watch anything else.
Okay, fair enough. I won't look at them. Let's see. From Dark Knight Apologetics, Dapper Dino, for Cody, how has the meaning of Christianity changed for you since you left YEC?
Good question. How has the meaning of Christianity changed for me since I left the Young Earth Creationist position? Well, I've realized that there's a lot more historical context in the Bible, which is where we should be getting our theology and beliefs about Christianity. That's where it matters. So I've realized there's so much more historical context in the Bible, and there's so much more that I just didn't realize how much we need to understand the culture of when the Old and New Testament were written in to better understand the Bible. I mean, you think, oh yeah, duh, Cody, you don't need a PhD to figure that out. But it's like, no, like a lot of Christians don't care about the context that Scripture is written in. So my Christian worldview has I've realized that it's just, if I'm going to be getting things from the Bible, like my views on origins, I need to understand the context. And of course that led me away from Young Earth, but also for the better, of course. And also when it comes to like New Testament theology and things, I need to understand that not everything in it was meant to be taken as like this, every word can be understood. You only need the context of the words. You don't need the context of the culture and blah, blah, blah. These are just common evangelical Christian like misconceptions about the Bible. But of course, my faith really hasn't changed since I left Young Earth Creationism. A lot of Christians will say you can't believe in evolution or old Earth or anything like that and be a Christian. It's like, well, the Bible doesn't even say the Earth is young or old. It doesn't give us anything on that. So that's not even brought up in, like, I don't even think Genesis 1 is maybe quoted from like once in the New Testament, maybe once or twice. It's not something they were concerned about. But yeah, nothing's really, just leaving Young Earth in itself, nothing's really changed about my views on Jesus and the Bible, but my views on inspiration of Scripture, obviously, yeah, we need the context. So there you go.
All right. So let's see. I want to bring up one quick comment, and then we're going to go to my next super chat. Let's see. So this is from Beach Price, who says, Dapper Dino, Bill Ludlow would be proud of you. I certainly hope so. For those of you who don't know, this whole series of Leaving Young Earth Creationism is sort of my tribute to Bill Ludlow, who was a science educator. He was an amateur paleontologist. He was the director of the Southwest Paleontological Society. He made numerous fossil finds out in the field in Arizona and New Mexico, in areas like the Painted Desert, all through various formations from basically from the Triassic all the way up into, very recent Cenozoic strata. He was finding camelid ancestors, ancient turtles. Some of the earliest known synapsid tracks were actually found by Bill Ludlow about a year and a half ago or so. And unfortunately, he passed away. I think it was early this year. And I was supposed to be on his show of the same title, Leaving Young Earth Creationism. And it was going to be just days after he unfortunately passed away. So this is sort of my little tribute to him. So I really do hope that he would be proud of me, because I feel like it's important that someone pick up that torch. So thank you very much, Beach. That really means a lot to me. But here is our $5 from Sigifredo Sarabia, who gave me a thumbs up earlier, so I'm going to go ahead and go with I'm getting it at least approximately right. Who says, Cody, despite so many cultures having a flood story, did it happen or not? If so, when did it happen? If not, following what you see. If not, are all cultures wrong?
Wait, I guess I'm confused with this question. So many cultures have a flood story. So does that mean it actually happened or not? Yeah. So there are many flood legends or myths across the world, especially near the ancient or Near Eastern. There's many ancient Near Eastern flood myths, and a lot of people would say, "Oh, well, that means that the biblical flood didn't happen because of this." And I mean, if it didn't, fine. It's mythology in the long run, which doesn't mean it had to technically have happened. But I'm convinced that the biblical flood did happen with Jesus's references to it. He didn't just quote it, but he actually treated the story like it happened, giving details outside of the account. So I'm pretty convinced of that. And I think that the fact that there's so many flood legends shows that there was probably a flood. So I think that, so the question is, which account of the flood is correct, if there are any that are correct? I would say the biblical flood account, of course, but so if so, when did it happen? If not, following young earth creationism. If not, are all cultures wrong? So I would say, yeah, the cultures aren't necessarily wrong. They're just trying to interpret something that happened in history. But when did it happen, if not following young earth creation? Okay, so the young earth creationists will say the flood was about 4,400 years ago. They just base this off of genealogical dates in the Bible, which aren't, they're using the wrong Old Testament text anyways. So the Septuagint gives the more accurate genealogies, because, well, that's a long story I'm not going to go down. But so from a young earth view, the flood should be about 5,000 years ago. However, it wasn't a global flood, and those genealogies are not made for using these chronological, just adding them all up. Here's the dates. Like, no, that's not what it is. And I'm reading a book on that too. But so the flood was probably about, at the smallest date, like 8,000 years ago, the most 15,000 years ago. I think it was around 13,000 years ago. Like I said before, I think it was the Persian Gulf Formation, a regional flood. The scriptures are more consistent with it, actually. Like, a lot of creationists don't realize that there's some major problems if you're going to go with the global flood interpretation. I mean, just look at Psalm 104. Psalm 104 verses 6 through 9. It tells us that there will never be another global flood after the creation week. I mean, when it's talking about the global primordial waters. Well, that's an issue if you're going to go with the global flood view, because, well, the global flood, Noah's day, happened after creation. So is that a contradiction in scripture? Well, no, it wasn't. Noah's flood wasn't global to begin with. So the dates that Ken Ham, Answers in Genesis, will give you, they're very inaccurate, and that's just kind of how it goes. Yeah. Okay.
The only thing I really have to add is, as far as all cultures wrong, I mean, there are a lot of cultures that have stories about the gods conquering a dragon or serpent that coils around the world and turning its body into the land of the earth. In fact, there are hints about similar stories in parts of the Psalms. So
yeah, exactly. There are.
I don't think that means that that's literally a thing. I don't think the continent under my feet was made from a giant serpent.
Exactly. Like, that's that Leviathan. That's that ancient Near Eastern chaos mythology. Like, the Psalms talk about God crushing the heads of the Leviathan, and it's not a dinosaur or any sort of. It's not a dinosaur. It's not a prehistoric animal, because it has multiple heads according to the Psalms. So, yeah, you don't find that in the fossil record unless there's like a strange mutation. But
we haven't found it yet.
Okay. Yeah. You haven't found it yet. Yeah.
I'm still fingers crossed for the three-headed T-Rex here. Come on, it would be cool. I don't think we're gonna find it, but it would be cool. Actually, one of the principles in paleontology is that, from a statistical standpoint, you're far more likely to find a typical example of a species than an aberrant one as a fossil. And so fossils are generally assumed, unless there is very good evidence otherwise, that they are of essentially typical representatives of their species. So the only exceptions are when we can demonstrate that there was some kind of pathology, and those are usually not like a congenital defect. It's usually some kind of like injury that's healed or not healed. So it's a basically just comes down to the statistics. If you pick, let's say there's 7 billion people and 40 of them are going to end up as fossils. Well, the chances of any of those 40 being particularly unusual in terms of gross morphology is very low. So we have from Eric Virthaler 92 a question for Cody. In retrospective, who does Cody feel like won the debate, and what are his thoughts on abiogenesis? I think Eric just wants you to give him the W.
Yeah, I think I see where this is going. I'll just say, it was a fun debate. I don't know if there was any win or lose for anyone. It was a good time. I don't know if I won the debate. That's more for the audience to judge. However, I don't recommend anyone watch it. So okay, so what are his thoughts on abiogenesis? It's a good question. So, I mean, I would say ultimately there, like, even if it was somehow naturally happened, like life didn't actually have to come from literal life. I think that if everything arose naturally, I'm perfectly fine with that. I really don't like. I mean, because it doesn't change anything from my perspective. I mean, God was involved. Like I said with the cake illustration, even if the universe is just so natural, like everything in it that happens has some sort of natural scientific explanation, including like the plagues in Egypt or fire falling from heaven, in the Old Testament on the altar, like all these things. If there's natural explanations, it doesn't necessarily diminish God. It doesn't take him out of the picture. It doesn't bother me at all. Now, I think it would be much more cool if the origin of life was explained by God using natural laws that we don't understand, rather than just like something more magical or supernatural. I think that would be cooler if it was natural, but the Bible doesn't really quite say. So, yeah, but good question.
Okay. This isn't so much a question, but I wanted to read it out. So it's from Dark Knight Apologetics, and he says, I always wanted to own a Septuagint. I'm having a hard time finding a reliable English translation of the Septuagint. Do you know of any that he might want?
Yeah, so, okay, so, yeah, the Septuagint is a really nice thing to own. I have different translations of it. I have it's called a New English Translation of the Septuagint with the primary text. It doesn't have the Apocrypha. So there's that one. They say it's one of the most accurate. The only problem is it's really literal, so it's kind of hard to read, and also the names aren't traditionally like translated. Like Moses is very different than the typical like the traditional way. But if you don't care about that, I would recommend that one. It's called a new English Translation of the Septuagint. There's also the Lexham English Septuagint. It's pretty good. It's more recent, so. Yeah, Lexham English Septuagint, very good.
All right, and I think one of the things I always find interesting is the Septuagint has a much longer text history than the Masoretic text, which is the standard Hebrew Bible that most English translations use for their Old Testament. But there are instances where the Septuagint and the Masoretic text differ. And in some cases where we have that same text also in the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Septuagint is the one that actually ends up getting the
it's more accurate.
Yeah, it's close to the Septuagint.
Yeah, exactly.
So there's some reason to think that the Septuagint might actually be a better preservation of the older manuscripts than the Masoretic text is, despite it being a translation.
Yeah, I actually think that the Septuagint is more reliable than the standard Hebrew Masoretic text. Like you already said, the Masoretic text is younger, doesn't go back as far, and there is deliberate corruption in the Masoretic text, especially in Messianic prophecy. It's definitely messed up. There's a and we know this because of the Dead Sea Scroll discovery, but there's an English translation of the Bible called the International Standard Version, the ISV International Standard Version, and it actually uses the Dead Sea Scrolls in the book of Isaiah instead of the standard Masoretic text. So when there's that textual variant, they go with the Dead Sea Scroll and the Septuagint rather than the traditional Masoretic text. And the Masoretic text is thoroughly corrupted, but we still have the older versions, so it's not like we lost the Word of God, or so to speak, you know.
Yeah, and actually, I do know that to this day, the Septuagint is still the official, or not official, but it is the generally used and default text for the Greek Orthodox Church.
Yeah.
And when new editions of the Bible are made for Eastern Orthodox groups in new languages, they typically translate from the Septuagint and not the Masoretic texts.
Yeah.
So there's another option, is if for getting a hold of an English translation of the Septuagint, is see if you can find a Bible translated for use in Orthodox churches into English, which is not hard to do. There are several of them. I actually have one. It's a Orthodox study Bible, and it.
Oh yeah, I've heard of that.
Yeah, it uses where the translation would disagree between the Masoretic text and the Septuagint, it defaults to the Septuagint, I think, in every case. I'm not positive, but so there you go. There's another option there. But sorry, we have for $2 from Sigfredo Sarabia, leaving YEC. What's the best explanation for beginning?
Do they mean like where should you start once you leave it?
I'm not sure. I'll tell you what. Sigfredo, put a clarification in, and I'll see what if I can't.
I thought maybe he was talking about like the Genesis, like in the beginning thing.
For the phrase?
Yeah, maybe, but because it seems like he's quoting, but maybe I'm wrong.
Well, give your explanation for that, and if that's not it, then let us know.
Okay.
And you don't have to super chat to let us know. Just tag me at Dapper Dino, and I'll make sure to read that out. Yeah,
because it would help if there was a should I just? I kind of covered what the beginning means in Genesis, but should I?
Yeah, just go for it. You can go over it quickly if you want.
Okay, so in Genesis 1, it says, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth." Well, recent Hebrew scholarship has shown that that's not and may not be an accurate translation of that verse. But the problem is young earth creationists rely on that translation because it seems to suggest an absolute beginning, but it can also be translated "in beginning God created," which would mean when God began to create, and that isn't creation ex nihilo, and that already debunks the young earth creationist view or their interpretation on the Bible. It's not just young earth, but they rely on it. So like Robert Alter's translation I have sitting here, the most accurate Hebrew translation so far, it says, "When God began to create heaven and earth, the earth was welter and waste." Very different from the traditional, but seems to be more accurate. So yeah.
Okay. And we have from Corporal Anon, who, by the way, was my last guest for Leaving Young Earth Creationism. So great to have you back in the chat. He asks, I just joined, so sorry if this has already been asked. Do you have a particular interpretation of Genesis you prefer? I really like John Walton's take on it.
Yeah. So yeah, they're late, and that's fine. Because I've gone over this a lot, and you'll get a better answer if you rewatch the stream. You get a longer answer, but yeah, overall my take is that Genesis is or at least the early chapters, like Genesis 1 through 11, is a basically polemic using ancient Near Eastern imagery, and it's not to be taken as something that we apply to our physical world. That's and regarding John Walton, I love John Walton. I've read his books. I'm reading one of his books right now on the flood, and yeah, his take on it is the functional interpretation of origins rather than material origins. So like, yeah, I guess just rewatch what I said in the beginning. That'll answer your question. But yeah.
Okay. And we have a question from Tyler West. Is Cody happier since leaving YEC?
Yeah. Yep. I am.
Oh, well, there you go. I'm glad that that's the case.
Well, I'm not like trapped in the box now, so yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely true. It is a bit freeing when you realize, oh, hey, I don't have to try to fit everything into this narrow and increasingly tenuous interpretation of the first couple chapters of the Bible.
Yeah, exactly.
Eric Vierthaler 92 says, "What are Cody's thoughts overall on my first debate with Kent Hovind?" Which I assume he means Eric's, not mine.
Yeah. So I watched a bit of that debate, and of course, you might as well just like put like a video of Kent saying something, because it's not ever going to be anything different when in any debate. It's just going to be the same stuff. So, but yeah, you did great, Eric. But yeah, I wasn't really impressed with Kent. I would say you probably won the debate, Eric. But yeah,
I find it hard to be impressed with Kent. It's
yeah.
The very hungry. I can't. Words are a thing apparently that I have to get used to again. The very hungry singularity asks, "Is it reasonable to believe God baked the rhubarb pie we live on when we can't find his thumb that tested its temperature?"
Ooh, interesting. Does he mean there's no evidence for God, basically?
I think it was mostly just a tongue-in-cheek thing based on your cake versus pie analogy.
Yeah. Oh, well, I don't know if I guess I'll just not answer, but yeah. All right.
Yeah, I think that was just to get a chuckle.
Yep.
Question for Cody. During our podcast, you said that I think that the archaeology, like of Native Americans pre-flood, was a lie or wrong. What's your opinion on this topic now?
During a podcast, archaeology, like of the Native Americans pre-flood, was a lie or wrong. Sure. Okay. Yeah, I remember he told me there was evidence that I guess it had to do with Native Americans 10,000 years ago. Well, actually, interestingly enough, even from my old perspective on that, like we could still find that archaeology even if there was a flood. But so from my view now, yeah, well, it wouldn't change anything because I believe that the flood wasn't global. It was a regional flood. I'm very confident that's what Scripture is saying, which is the most consistent view. So, like, it doesn't matter what was happening at the time, or like with Native Americans or anything, what was happening in the pre-flood world, the antediluvian world, because the flood didn't reach every continent or anywhere that was outside of the Mesopotamian plains, basically. That's my interpretation.
Okay. And we have another question from Eric Vierthaler 92. What are Cody's thoughts on Aaron Ra? I don't even know if you have any, but if you do.
Yeah. I like his hair.
Yeah, it's hard not to like Aaron Ra's hair.
Yep, he has very nice hair.
I'm a little jealous of the hair, if I'm being entirely honest.
Yeah, definitely. So Aaron Ra's channel, I think he has some good videos. He does quite a bit of research, even though I disagree with his atheist position, because I'm not atheist, I'm Christian. But I do think he brings up very good points when it comes to creationism and young earth interpretations of the Bible and stuff like that. I think he actually makes good points. And like my friend Robert Rowe from Sentinel Apologetics, when he did a debate with him, in his introduction, he was like, I actually appreciate, Robert was saying to Aaron Ra, I appreciate what you're doing in a sense, because you're showing why most Christians have been misinterpreting the Bible using science and stuff like that. But yeah.
Okay. Let's see. This is from Miguel Francesco Ogar, who says, how would you describe Ancient Aliens using 3 words?
Is he speaking of like the show?
I'm not sure. Go with whichever interpretation is the most fun for you.
Because it's capitalized, so I assume he means the show. I've never actually watched the show. I've only just seen like clips on YouTube and like the memes,
The aliens.
Yeah, the hair. Also jealous of his hair. Yeah.
My favorite bit is I'm not saying it was aliens, but it was aliens.
Yeah, exactly.
I have to admit, I actually watched a fair bit of that. It's like it's like a dirty little like guilty pleasure where it's just like, this is so ridiculous, and it's like a comedy show, and so
but it's fun to watch.
It is, and I have a degree in history, and that's what actually makes it even more fun because I'm like, this is the most crazy thing I've ever seen, and it's just like a wild ride of nonsense. So
Yeah, no, it's very entertaining from what I've seen on YouTube.
it is. I would say, as long as you're someone who has an easy time, like realizing why there are serious problems here. Like as long as you're not too gullible, go and check it out. It's a ridiculously fun amount of time. Although there are a few little racist overtones that I've noticed in that giant monumental architecture in Europe is never explained by aliens. Only other parts of the world. It's like aliens didn't build any of the giant cathedrals. No, no, no. But
Yeah.
how could the natives of Mesoamerica have built a pyramid? It's like what? Why do
Yeah.
you think they wouldn't have been able to? They're not stupid.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there's a little bit of that. I think the only European alien site that I've ever seen identified was Stonehenge.
Yeah.
And, yeah. There's also, I guess they did once say that there was some Roman construction. It was basically just a retaining wall. That's what it actually was. But there was a Roman construction in what's now Turkey that was said to have been made as an alien landing pad when really it was a retaining wall to keep the soil up so that the temple on the hill above it wouldn't collapse. And
Dear.
Well, and then they say, well, cathedrals aren't prehistoric. Yeah, but neither are many of the things that Ancient Aliens talks about. That's Smitty saying. The pyramids aren't prehistoric either. So, I mean,
yeah.
So let's see. From Tioga, how does Cody reconcile the creation myths of other religions with his Abrahamic belief?
Yeah, good question. I mean, as I've been explaining, like all the other creation myths, especially in the ancient Near East, in that world at the time, so they all have very similar creation stories about their gods doing things to the world or being created from the world. They all start with the pre-existing chaos waters. Like Genesis starts that way, with darkness on the surface of the deep and God's breath over the waters. And we see Enuma Elish, it all starts from gods being created from waters. And it's a very consistent thing because that's just how they thought. So I have no problem with all these different creation myths and all of their similarities and how they parallel and how the Bible is similar to them. So I think it's simple. Like the Bible is written as a defense against these other creation stories to show that, like, no, Yahweh is the one true God. He wasn't created from the water. He's the one that created using the water. There's a big difference. That was shocking to a lot of people at the time. It's like, why is God just here? He's not created. He doesn't even technically show up. He's just there. And so that's kind of just don't look at it from Western eyes. That's my number one advice. Like, don't look at it from our Western eyes. Look at it from ancient Near Eastern eyes, if that makes any sense. Then the story makes a lot. It's just so much more. It's beautiful, and it's more beautiful. It makes more sense in that way. But okay.
All right. So we have from Tyler West. Would Cody like to debate Kent Hovind on Young Earth Creationism now?
No.
I don't blame you. Yeah.
That's all I have to say. No.
Yeah,
considering the fact that now he always chickens out of debates before they happen, like he's been doing that consistently now, so it wouldn't have been worth the time to set it up.
Oh, did you see my Kent Hovind is a coward video?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, he's been doing the same thing with Eric Vierthaler here. It's canceled on him twice. He did show up for a debate on Modern Day Debate, and it was with a guy named David, and there is an after show on my channel for that. So.
Oh yeah, I watched that actually.
Yeah,
I haven't watched. I make it sound like I've watched every video, even though I haven't, but
you don't have to. Don't worry.
Yeah.
I do appreciate it though. So I mean, yeah. And wait, no, hold on. I take it back. You have to watch every single one of them, and if you don't,
okay,
we'll strap you down in a movie theater, Clockwork Orange style.
Okay.
Complete with the eye drops. You know.
Oh yeah.
Because we can't let you blink, but we also can't let your eyes dry out because then you can't watch either way.
Exactly.
So yeah, it's yeah, the Ludovico technique for Dapper Dino. from Eric Verthaler. Did I ever tell Cody that I've had a flat earther argue with me once saying that the earth is flat because football does not exist? I know he's told
What?
me that. He's told me that story. I didn't understand why that was an argument, but
Okay, interesting. He never told me that. But that's okay. Interesting.
So I have a question here from Tioga, but I'm not sure if it's for you or not. And
I understand what she's saying. I kind of like to respond, but
okay, well, could you summarize it? Because I'm not sure. I'm getting
okay.
it.
So if it's like, so she said, well, the sky cow isn't consistent, and she said, polytheism to monotheism, how does that make it valid? Okay, so when I was saying that there are similarities between the different creation accounts, I wasn't saying that they were all identical. There's obviously contradictions between them all, but the point is they're all using the same type of, or most of them are using that same consistent imagery regarding the pre-existing waters and chaos and everything coming from the waters, and the vaulted dome sky separating the waters above from waters below. These are all the similarities that we pick up on when we read all the popular ancient creation myths. So yeah, the sky cow, yeah, that's not consistent. Polytheism to monotheism, how does it make it valid? I wasn't saying that that the view on God changing it makes it valid. I was just saying that, and the Genesis account being written by a monotheist from our perspective, technically polytheist, but that's a rabbit trail I don't want to go on. So being written by a monotheist, yeah, he or she will describe the account from the one God. That was kind of the whole point of the account, to show there's one God, everything else is created and natural. But the one true God wasn't created, and he's supernatural.
Okay.
Okay, yeah.
So we're going to take one more question, and then we're going to go to the wrap-up phase where we're going to do some channel news and stuff like that, and Cody can plug anything he wants to. So this is going to be the last question, unless you super chat, in which case, because you paid me to ask it, so I'm going to ask it. So here we go. This is from the very hungry singularity. You know what? A singularity, which is what I'm going to call you right now. Your name trips me up every single time, and I don't know why. Anyway, how is the Bible more correct when it borrowed those stories from myths before it?
So if you're speaking of creation, like the creation account, I'm not necessarily arguing it's more correct. That's not my point of saying that. I'm saying when we compare the stories, we see that the Genesis account, it uses other, it has the same ancient Near Eastern characteristic, and it's using that to make theological statements about there only being this one God, and everything else isn't a god. The sun and the moon, they're not gods. They're just the greater light, lesser light. So like, I have no problem with, there's many polemics in the Bible. Like, the Psalms are filled with polemics. There's polemics in Job. There's or I should say defense, because that's what the word means. So like, I'm not trying to necessarily even argue for the Bible's accuracy or it being more correct or being the truth. I'm just pointing out it's using theology, or it's using their understanding of the world to make theological statements about God. It's teaching spiritual truths, what they claim to be actually true, using their perception of the cosmos. Okay.
Fair enough. All right. Well, so yeah, let's do some quick channel news, and then we'll see what else. If Cody has anything to plug, and then I'll see you guys on Tuesday. But so Tuesday is going to be the next Kent with Bent. I don't have a title for it, so if you have ideas for a title, let me know. I do need to get a title basically by tomorrow, so because I'm gonna have to make that thumbnail and actually schedule the thing. So that'll be Kent with Bent. Tuesday, right now, it's looking like I'm going to upload Creationism and the Big Bang, the movie. So that, if you want to show up for that premiere, strap in. It's going to be a long one. It's about, actually, you know what? I can find out just exactly how long it is. Give me a second. Go to my studio. Yeah, Creationism and the Big Bang of the movie is a 2.5 hour video that is literally my entire Creationism and the Big Bang smushed into one, with the ads placed in more appropriate place than they would be by the automatic YouTube algorithm. So I do those. So one of my things is when I finish a series, I like to put the previous series in a single video for people who like to binge watch, so they don't have to find a playlist or click through a bunch of updates. So yeah, you can just click that one. I've already done one for Genesis Apologetics Should Apologize. So that's this one that's coming out. Then Saturday, I'm not sure what's going to be on Saturday. I'm actually thinking that if we can set it up, it might actually be fun to have Cody on with Erica to talk about human evolution. But that's completely up to him, and I don't expect an answer right now because
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, exactly. It's a fun idea, but I cannot guarantee that that's going to happen. But even if I don't get anything together for a stream, I have plenty of videos that can come out. Let's see. I've been asked about the birthday stream. Yes, I'm having a birthday stream. It is going to be on June 14th, and there will probably actually be several streams. What I'm probably going to do is I'm going to do a couple hours of streaming, a half-hour break, a couple more hours of streaming, a half-hour break, a couple more hours of streaming. So there you go. Let's see. YT, the YouTube ads have been crazy lately, says Maya. And yeah, they have. I'm really tired of this Postmates one. You guys seen this? It comes up on like every single video. I don't know how much money Postmates shoveled at YouTube, but my goodness. Oh, and also, I've always been skipping it, so I didn't get to the first celebrity that I actually recognized, which was Danny Trejo, which is how I realized that these were all celebrities. I just thought they were people who were, they're still people, but yeah, anyway, I don't want to keep talking about commercials. As far as a chat with Random Evo Times on Saturday, one problem there is that YouTube is tricky with minors, Random Evo Times. So it's very easy for YouTube to come down pretty hard on such things. So I think if we're going to do anything together, the safest thing to do would basically be for me to help you out on a video and give you some of my clips that you can incorporate into a video of your own. And then I can link people to it. Unfortunately, because of how strict YouTube is with things like that, I am very hesitant to put anyone under 18 on the channel. So I'm sorry about that. I would prefer that to be an easier thing to do, because I think that they are a little bit too strict on that, but it's unfortunately how it is. Yeah. I might sneeze. Hold on. I sneezed. All right, thank you. There we go. Let's see. Smitty says Erica is cool, so do it, bro. And I do agree. Erica is really cool. I've said it several times, and she said it too. We sort of have like sister channels, right? Like if there's a fair chance that I'm going to be on her channel at any given time, there's a fair chance she's going to be on mine, and we do a lot of topics that are complementary. And so if you're really into mammals, and especially primates and humans, well, I guess primates including humans, she's definitely someone to talk to. And I cover a lot more of the reptile side of things. So and it says, "Gosh, bless you, thank you." So as far as the birthday stream though, because I haven't super finished talking about that, there's probably going to be, each stream is probably going to have a separate thing. Like one, I might watch a video and do the sort of Kent with Bent thing, although it doesn't have to be Kent Hovind. Another one might be just some fun stuff. Like I might play a game, or we might go over stuff like how the Warhammer army is coming along, which, in case you hadn't heard, I currently have on the way a second set of Marines, as well as a couple HQ guys. So technically, once the HQ guys get in here, I will have like a minimum army that I could actually field. It won't be assembled because there's going to be a lot of kit bashing going on in my plan. But there you go. Vandalia1998 says, tell Cody he is welcome to guest star on my podcast to talk about his channel or other things if he wants on a future Saturday. So there you go. If you want to be, I think it's back on Vandalia1998's podcast because you were there at one point. So there you go. I think that's it for channel news. More details will be coming the closer we get to June 14th about what exactly I'm doing on June 14th. It's going to be like an all-day thing is what I'm thinking, just because I want to celebrate my birthday with you guys because, you know, chat's awesome. I love chat. So, yeah, Cody, what do you have to plug? What do you want to give us?
So my YouTube channel is Cody Sorenson. The URL is youtube.com/Cody Sorenson 19. Hopefully you guys know how to spell Sorenson. I don't know. Sorenson. Yeah, that's my YouTube, and I don't really use any other social media much, but I have a blank Twitter if you want to follow that, so that's wonderful. Yeah, so that's about all. It's just like youtube.com/Cody Sorenson 19, and you'll find some interesting videos on the Bible there. And yeah.
I'm having a little trouble finding it. Just link it to me, and I'll make sure that it gets added in the description. So there you go. Smitty says, happy birthday whenever you said it was. It's June 14th, June 1-4. So that'll be when I have a whole big, like I said, it's probably going to end up going about 7 hours in total, but there will be some stops in between. So, yep. That'll be the big thing. Thank you. I appreciate it. Ian Chen has already sent me a very generous gift voucher to Games Workshop, which is how I got my HQ guys, because the ones that I needed were not on the, what do you call it, on Amazon, which is what I have been doing, is just putting things on the Amazon wish list. So, but also, what I really want people to get me for my birthday, honestly, is to come show up for the streams, because that's really what I want. It's for people to come and hang out and help celebrate with me. So yeah, I'm going to be adding Cody's channel link to the description right now.
Is there? Could I say one last thing?
Absolutely.
If we're closing it down now, if there's anyone if anyone comes across this video, or maybe is even watching it now, that holds to like young Earth and like flood geology. Okay, so if your whole thing is based on biblical authority, which I believe in biblical authority, but if that's what you're basing your young Earth views on, here's what the Bible says. Okay, in Genesis 6, Genesis 6:14. Make yourself an ark of gopher wood. Make rooms in the ark and cover it inside and out with pitch. Okay, well, that pitch, that's very crucial for flood geologists. Because what a lot of flood geologists say is that there were no sedimentary layers before the flood. The sedimentary layers were caused by a global flood. Well, that pitch, the bitumen, requires sedimentary layers to be formed. So, like, I was looking at what one geologist said here. Let me find it. Okay. Hang on. Okay, so overlying sedimentary rock, and that the bitumen pitch used by Noah to caulk the ark was derived from the hydrocarbon-rich sedimentary rocks. Therefore, sedimentary rock must have existed before the flood. The Bible itself never claims that all of the sedimentary rocks on Earth formed at the time of Noah's flood. Only flood geologists make this claim. So for Noah to have pitched the ark, he needs sedimentary layers. Like, so so you can't say evidence of a global flood is sedimentary layers on the Earth. That's just something I wanted to point out, because that was kind of an eye-opener for me. It's like, that's so crucial.
Yeah.
I don't think a lot of people realize that.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you very
Yeah.
much, Cody. It's been a lot of fun. I think we should have more talks. I think it's been a very interesting time. And thank you, everyone who's come. And yeah, I will be getting in contact with those of you who I said I would. See you later.